Hi everyone, in this video we're going to be talking about the Monty Hall problem. And as you can see, I'm saying here in the title that it is a single trial, so that's a reminder to us all. Now the Monty Hall problem is said to be the most famous brain teaser in the world, the most famous probability problem in the world, and it has a very large literature around it. It has print and internet articles, it has many YouTube videos, and a very large contingent of academic papers that have all been written about what is the right solution. Now this is the setup that we're using for this video. We're saying fictitiously the SAT has included the Monty Hall problem on the test, and students are suing about which answer was marked right. So let me read the problem. Suppose you're on a game show and you're given the choice of 3 doors. Behind one door is a car, behind the other's goats. You pick a door, say number 1, and the host who knows what's behind the doors opens another door, say number 3, which has a goat. He then says to you, do you want to pick door number 2? Which choice is to your best advantage? And we give 4 choices. A, stick with the door you picked. B, switch to the other closed door. C, flip a coin to decide what to do. Or D, unknown. It's unknown what is to your best advantage. The SAT, and again fictitiously, marked B, switch, as the correct answer. That's the answer that's the unanimous choice of this very large literature. And the students who are suing say it should be D, unknown. So let's take a look at the implications of that. Now, here we have the rules of the game, and we just stated them, but they bear a reminder. So to begin with, you're on a game show. That's a once-in-a-lifetime opportunity. That makes this a one-time trial. The car could be in either of the remaining positions, so that means that while we're showing the car in the first position, it could switch with the brown goat. So the car could be behind the second door, and the goat could be behind the first. So these two can switch. The host could have revealed the gray goat, regardless of whether the contestant had chosen the car or the brown goat. So just to repeat that, this door could be opened regardless of which of these doors had been picked. The host could also have gone first and revealed the gray goat. If so, the contestant would be in the exact same position. Now there are no percentages. It's all or nothing, winner take all. If the contestant picked the car, switching loses. If they pick the goat, switching wins. It's cut and dry. We don't know which it is, so the answer is unknown. Now imagine that we had a home audience playing along. And here we're showing 3 teams, the green team, the yellow team, and the red team. When the gray goat is revealed, the green team is out. That was their door. If we say now imagine if we cut to someone side stage at the show, and they whispered to the home audience what the literature whispers to everyone or tells us outright, that there's an advantage to switching. Well, then the red team would switch to door 2, the yellow team would switch to door 1, and the next day the station would be flooded with calls and emails saying, why did you tell us to do something so silly as to switch? So when both teams switch, one will win and one will lose. There's no advantage to switching or sticking. We don't know where the car is. Here we can take another tack. We can say, let's assume we have three different contestants. So we have Jack, Jill, and Jim. They each pick a door. Jim's door is opened and Jim is out of the game. Jack and Jill are still in it. If we say to each of them there is an advantage to switching, what happens? One of them wins and one of them loses by switching. By the same token, if they both stick, one wins and one loses. The key is who has the car. If Jack has the car, he should stick and Jill should switch, but we don't know. And so again, the answer really is unknown. Now it's time to point to something that we all think we know but gets forgotten in the Monty Hall problem. We all know, or we like to think we know, that probability applies to averages over large numbers of trials and not to the outcome of a single trial. For example, if we flip a coin that comes up heads 100 times, the chances of it coming up heads the next time are still supposed to be 50-50. There's something known as the Monte Carlo fallacy or the gambler's fallacy that runs along the same lines. In 1913, the ball of the roulette wheel in the casinos of Monte Carlo landed on black 26 times in a row. As that number built up, gamblers lost more and more money betting on red, presumably on the belief that somehow the universe was tipped in favor of red. The Monty Hall literature follows the belief of the gambler's fallacy. No matter how we slice it or how we phrase it, the literature claims that probability applies to a single trial. So you're on the jury. Which answer should the SAT mark as right? So the question isn't what would you choose if it was your choice, but rather an organization like the SAT, what should they mark as right? And I can't see how that organization or how anyone would choose any answer but unknown. We don't know where the car is, so we don't know whether switching wins or loses. If we picked one, door 1, and the car is there, switching to 2 loses. By the same token, if door 1 is a goat, switching to 2 wins. We don't know what the answer is. The answer is really unknown. So now we can take a look at the literature. Here we can see we don't have print articles here, but we have many internet articles, and there are many print articles as well. And look at all the trouble that all of these authors went to, all of the graphics they spent time creating, and all of the brain power that went into this. And what's interesting is that all of these articles are unanimous. They all conclude that switching is the answer, that there's an advantage to switching. So they don't really focus or state outright that it's a one-time trial. Instead, they change the math, we'll say. When we look at YouTube videos, we see the same thing. We have all these videos, and there are many, many more, but all of them conclude the same thing. They take different approaches, but they all arrive at the same conclusion that there is an advantage to switching, and none of them really address the idea of a single trial. And the same holds true for the academic papers. The academic papers are divided into 2 groups. The main group proves that switching works through probability exercises. So they write equations and they do mathematical proofs. And a second, smaller section of the academic papers get into the psychology of why folks like yours truly would say that there isn't an advantage to switching, or rather that it's a one-time trial and the answer is unknown. Now we'll take a look at the magazine column that started it all. So the problem really came to life when Parade magazine published the column you see here in the September 9th, 1990 issue. At the time, Parade magazine wasn't so much a magazine proper. It was an insert into the Sunday papers of virtually every Sunday edition from every paper in the U.S. Maybe not everyone, but essentially everyone. It was very, very widely circulated. It was said to have some 35 million copies circulated each week and to have the largest circulation of any magazine in America. And Ask Marilyn was a very popular column. These were the pre-internet days, so things like this got a lot of traction. Now, the first part of the column shows a user writing in, and the question is in bold. And he asked the question verbatim as we asked it before. So suppose you're on a game show and you're given the choice of 3 doors. Behind one door is a car, behind the other is goats. You pick a door, say number 1, and the host, who knows what's behind the doors, opens another door, say number 3, which has a goat. He then says to you, do you want to pick door number 2? Is it to your advantage to switch your choice? So that's a reader asking the columnist. And the columnist says, yes, you should switch. And then she pulls a verbal sleight of hand. She switches the math. She says the first door has a 1/3 chance of winning, but the second door has a 2/3 chance. Now, in probability, when we talk about 1/3 and 2/3, we're really talking about a large collection of outcomes, a large collection of trials, if you like, and then the distributions or proportions of those trials. That's what's divided into 1/3 and 2/3. We don't normally talk about a single outcome, but she's flipped the script there, and she's executed that verbal sleight of hand. But then she goes on to say, here's a good way to visualize what happened. Suppose there are 1 million doors. So now we've switched the scenario and switched the math again. Now we're no longer on a game show where there are 3 doors. We're in some imaginary world where there are 1 million doors. And this is the tack that the literature takes. It stops talking about the actual problem, which we see in bold, the one-time appearance on a game show, and it starts to talk about other things. Now, here's her first example. The columnist tells us that the first door has a 1/3 chance of winning, but the second door has a 2/3 chance. And this is depicted commonly in the literature. This exact example is given in the Wikipedia account of Monty Hall. So one door is opened, and we take the post-it note of 1/3 from that door, and we put it onto the door that wasn't chosen. This is assuming that the first door was picked, which has the car. So this is actually termed probability consolidation in some YouTube videos. There's really no such thing as probability consolidation, and if people will argue that there is, that's one of the problems we're going to find about probability. There's a lot about it, I've already mentioned this, that's somewhat vague, and when we start to really hone in and tighten down, we see a lot of ambiguity in probability. So in any event, this is based on the belief that probability can apply to the outcome of a single trial, but also that it can move around somewhat like fairy dust. We mentioned before that the car could be in the second position and the goat in the first position. This makes a lot more sense if the car is in the middle because we're sort of directing the flow toward the car, but when the goat is here, it makes no sense at all. And that's why we've portrayed it this way. Now if we come to the scenario where there are multiple doors, the columnist mentioned 1 million doors. There are many YouTube depictions and other articles that depict 100 doors because it's impractical to show 1 million doors. But even at 100 doors, we're no longer in the context of a game show. Now, throughout the literature, whenever things are tweaked like this, the verbal description of the new rules is very important because the rules change with subtle differences in the phrasing. And that's what we have here. The rules of the game change with the phrasing. So in this case, if there are 3 doors and the host opens 1, the chances of picking the car from the remaining doors is 1 in 2, or are 1 in 2. That's the original scenario. If we start with 4 doors and 1 is opened, the chances are 1 in 3. The math changes with the number of doors. If we start with 100 doors, the chances are 1 in 99. If we start with 1 million doors, the chances are 1 in 999,999. So there's no mystery in any of this. When we change the math, we change the math. The game show started with 3 doors. So when 1 is open, the chances are 1 in 2, and the advantage of sticking versus switching is unknown. That's the original problem, and multiplying the number of doors in the conversation takes us away from the original problem. Now, these are the generally accepted rules of the game throughout the literature. Multiple game show appearances are permitted. That's a change from the original scenario on a game show. The car, brown goat, and gray goat are evenly represented among the doors, so we've spread them out or distributed them evenly or randomly, as it's often phrased. We award victory when the car is chosen and stuck to. However, that's not going to happen because we're going to follow the scenario of always switching. So we award victory also when a goat is chosen and switched from. So those are these 4 last rows, and they all result in victory. The host does not open a door with a car behind it, so that's a change. So we don't evenly distribute the way that the doors are opened. We shift the distribution in these last 2 rows. So what's the result? Well, the rules dictate that switching will result in winning 2 out of 3 games. We don't need math to prove this. We've specified it in the rules. The rules in this case represent nature. We're just kind of using that figuratively. Mathematical equations must describe nature, not the other way around. So here, what I'm really doing is questioning why we have all of the mathematical proofs and academic papers about this. Depending on how we phrase the rules, the math follows or the outcomes follow. And the only thing that the math can do is confirm it, not prove it. Saying that the math proves it has things backwards. And now we come to the conclusion. So the vast literature on the Monty Hall problem shows why it's a math lover's dream. It's a problem that got stuck in the craw of so many people that they couldn't help sitting down to write an article or paper about it or make a video. And I'm no different. It got stuck in my craw when I saw it in the movie 21. The sheer smugness of how it was presented infuriated me, which is, of course, the fun and what has me smiling right now. I just couldn't let it go. I was incensed. In my mind's eye, I kept staring at the screen. Nothing moved, I kept telling myself. Absolutely nothing moved. And the more I thought about it, the more firmly it became wedged in my craw. When I sat down to write this up as an entry for the Summer of Math Exposition Contest, my intent was simply to show that the rules change through various presentations of the problem. As the rules change, the different mathematical proofs change to describe them. But as I began the write-up, something I had long been dimly aware of began to command more and more of my attention. It was the fact that the probability discussion tends to skirt the idea of a single trial. It is vague and inconsistent from source to source, textbook to textbook, and so on, about the idea of what happens with a single trial. It's vague about what 1 means in probability and vague about what 0 means. It's also vague about a pet peeve of mine, the idea of null, the unknown, and the importance of 3-valued logic. That leads to our next step, examining what happens around a single trial through an Excel simulation of the problem. Probability is not supposed to apply to a single trial. It's supposed to apply to distributions over large numbers of trials. And that's what will send us on our treasure hunt. The spreadsheet will lead to all kinds of insights into probability, and that will lead to some profound questions about randomness and the implications of randomness. And that's the topic of our next video.